Andrea and Lorna, are you there with me? How are you both this morning?
Hey, Alex. Good morning.
I'm incredibly excited to have you guys here. I know it's really keen to hear more about the business. I often think that the entrepreneurs tell the stories much better than me and I can do. So, just starting off with yourself, Lorna, it would be great to just hear a little bit about your educational background. You obviously worked in the space for a number of years, and how CAPSLOCK came about.
Yeah, sure. So my background is a mixture of education, really, and computer science, cybersecurity. So I earned my spurs many years ago as a teacher, inner city Bradford schools. So, and then I moved over to university where I worked for a number of years as a senior academic alongside Andrea, and that was in computer science and cybersecurity and specialising in cyber. And then alongside that, I did quite a number of consultancy days as well out in industry, and then made the move full time over to industry and consulted in private and public sector, sort of up to the highest level. And then in terms of CAPSLOCK, CAPSLOCK came about. So we were approached by Jonathan, our third co-founder, a couple of years ago now, who he'd seen a company in the US, Lambda School, who was doing boot camps and using this income share agreement, and kind of approached us and said, what do you think? There's obviously a skills gap in the UK, and would you be interested in sort of exploring this? And both myself and Andrea were so excited by the prospect of doing something really different. I mean, traditional education, universities are fantastic and they've got the rigor, but they're very inflexible in terms of what you can do. And we'd worked extensively in university and in industry training, so we knew all the best bits of both, and we were really excited to bring that into a new product. So we had that rigor of university, but with that flexibility that we could do as a startup, really. And we were also really excited about that, as you mentioned and alluded to earlier, Alex, that removing the barriers for people, because cyber is often seen as this smoke and mirrors industry that's really difficult, and I won't ever be able to do that. There's lots of acronyms, lots of language around it. I think that can be off-putting for people. It can be quite expensive to get into when you're looking at traditional certifications. So for us, we were really passionate about removing those barriers and just making it as easy as possible for people to come into the sector and career change.
Yeah, I think it's incredible from when I first spoke to you both a year ago to where the business is today, and the tangible impact you're having on learners is just incredible. And I think that was what was so exciting when we first looked at the business, in terms of removing those barriers into an industry that actually to a learner could be seen as really difficult and really complex to actually think about how you can map out a career within it. So amazing to see. I'd love to. I think what's also unique about CAPSLOCK is the learning approach. I think that's your cutting edge, and it'd be great from your perspective, Andrea, to touch a little bit around how did you think about that learning approach? How does it work in practice? It'd be great to hear a little bit more on that. If that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. We first trialled this approach to learning really in university. We used it for a number of years, and saw how incredibly beneficial it was for the learners, but also how much more interesting it was to be in the classroom. So we used two main methodologies within our learning style. The first is team-based learning. It's a little bit flipped classroom for anybody who's used to that as a term. So there's some pre-work up front, then there's assessment testing, and then what we call application exercises. So the real hands-on activities. That's the first element to it. The second element really is using problem-based learning. So instead of kind of doing a large number of theoretical activities, it's a matter of getting into the classroom and actually solving hands-on problems all the time. It's one way really to simulate the workplace. I think most of us understand that once you're working in cyber, the biggest thing you do is continuously problem solve, think on your feet, different environments. The classroom really simulates that activity. So as teams, they start in teams from day one. They're in teams of 5 or 6, and they spend the majority of their time in those teams, so they become almost like a little family, and they solve problems that are of increasing complexity throughout the course. So by the end of the course, they're solving real industry problems that are hugely complex in a really tight time scale, and it builds incredible cyber skills, but also impressive impact skills as well. The learners really are incredible once they've finished.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to speak to a couple of the learners a few months back, and it was just incredible to hear their kind of transformation stories. And I know also kind of the power of community you guys are building as well, and that's really important to you, isn't it, Lorna?
It is, yeah, absolutely. I think, it's obviously it's about career change and getting skills in cyber and going through that. But also a lot of our learners, they come from such diverse backgrounds. A lot of what we build with them as well is those confidence skills and those impact skills, because, they suffer a lot from imposter syndrome. So we do that a number of ways. We've got a professional coach who works one-to-one with them, and a careers coach as well to support that. But we build that community around them as well, and that network around them. So they're continuously supporting each other. Our alumni comes into the courses that we've got. They speak to the new learners, they talk to them about the difficulties they're going to face. You can see on LinkedIn, they're all connecting, and we have Slack channels and get-togethers. And, we're doing hopefully an in-person alumni meetup as well next year. So we can continue to build that network and that community. And I think it's just, it's absolutely essential for them to have that support.
Yeah, I'm completely aligned with that. I think it's just one of the things I'm most excited about what you guys are doing. I think it's just incredibly, that community you're building out, and they're all advocates of CAPSLOCK, which is great. I'm probably wearing the hoodies too. One thing I just wanted to touch on also is, some of the career transformation stories, we've discussed fleetingly this morning. You'll know these better than any. I think it would be great to give the audience a flavour of some of those. Andrea, are you happy to just talk through some of those potentially? So where people have come from, where they're now, what roles they're in now, it would be great to hear.
Yeah, I think diversity really is the key when we talk about this. In terms of diversity of age, so our youngest learners are around about 18, our oldest learners are over 60, so real diversity of experience and background. If we take a few kind of almost case studies, we've had taxi drivers, cleaners, dancers, professional dancers, music teachers, police officers, ex-army and ex-forces. I don't know where to start with that, but they've worked in supermarkets, they've done all sorts of things really, and full-time carers, parents, you name it, they're in the classroom. And I think what is brilliant about that is the diversity it brings to thought. So when you're looking at solving a problem, people have solved different problems for completely different contexts in totally different ways. So it really brings that diversity in and adds a real richness to the classroom. So some incredible transformations. People who kind of said, I thought I was going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I can't believe I once was cleaning not so long ago, and now I'm in a room full of people where I'm leading ISO implementations and everybody's listening to me. And so I think that change in life, that transformation in possibilities has been the best thing for us. We celebrate literally every job everybody gets.
I think just some actual examples. We took one. So Mikey was a dancer. He worked on cruise ships, and he was 7 weeks into the part-time course when he got his first role as a SOC analyst. So he continued to do the part-time course. He started his role, and actually now Mikey is deputy of that SOC and has actually hired 2 more learners from CAPSLOCK to go into that SOC. So you see there, he's progressed so well. And I think another one as well is Nicole, who I always give the example of, because Nicole was 3 children. She'd not worked for a number of years. She'd been a stay-at-home mum. And I remember her coming on the course, and me and Andrea being on calls with her, sometimes weekly, where she was just like, who's ever going to hire me? I've not worked for so long, I can't do this. And we worked with her, and all the other support staff worked with her. And now she's got a fantastic role at PwC. In fact, she messaged us the other week and said, you're never going to guess what I've done today, Lorna. I was like, okay, 3 weeks in, I've asked for a promotion, and they're fast tracking me. And it was like, yes, go on, Nicole, So you see, the confidence and everything that you see throughout the course and building, and when they come out the other end, honestly, it's just, I think it's the one thing that I probably didn't factor in. I knew it was going to be successful and it could be successful, but just the impact that it's having on people's lives is just fantastic. It really is.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate enough to speak to both Nicole and Mikey, and really, I came off feeling very positive about what I get to do every day, which is the same as you guys. So it's wonderful. I could speak all day on this. I think I'll quite quickly be getting told to move on if we go on too much. I would love to ask you one more question, which is just a bit of a selfish question from my perspective, but you've been operating in the education market for a number of years, both of you. I'd love to hear your perspectives on on the space and where you see things going from a learning perspective, do you think CAPSLOCK is kind of where things are heading in terms of pathways through to careers? I'd love to hear your perspectives on that before we wrap up.
Yeah, I think personally that the education sector's moving to a more diverse offering. I think traditionally it's been seen as a rite of passage from school through to university, through to a job. And for some people that hasn't happened. And it's seen then in that case that many doors are closed for those people. So I think diversity of offering is really key. I think COVID actually, as much as it caused a lot of problems in terms of people's ability to function online, it's totally changed their outlook to being remote. So I think that's another thing, a lot bigger use of tech and remote tech, so that people can study more flexibly from their own home. So I think definitely diversity of offering and more flexible.
Yeah, I think it has to happen. You know, I think Andrea's right. We've got this very traditional approach of you do your GCSEs, A-levels, go to university, and anybody who hasn't gone through that almost, I think, feels like they're a failure or they've not got what's needed in certain professions. But I think that has to change, because the reality is that we're not able to fill these jobs just based on people who are doing that, and they're not always the most appropriate people. So education's got to change. It's got to become more diverse, more innovative, to allow people the opportunities.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's why when I said at the start, you know, we're all about making sure there's an alignment from the impact perspective. I think we're very aligned from the UFI perspective to CAPSLOCK. So
yeah,
you know, thank you so much for joining both this morning. It's been great to speak again. I'm sure I'll speak to you soon on a board call or something. But thank you so much for joining.